Okay, everyone. Well, we're going to go ahead and kick things off now. I can see some folks starting to trickle in the audience now, but you are now joining the Retrotec webinar introducing the DM32X manometer. So this is a presentation that we've been excited to give for a long time now. And basically what we're going to do today is just introduce some of the basic features of the gauge. A lot of people have been asking, well, is it just a DM32 with just some more bells and whistles? And the quick answer to that is no, it's not. It's completely been re-engineered and redesigned from the ground up. And we're going to show you guys today what that means. So with us today is Ben Walker. Ben is one of our co-CEOs and has been with Retrotec for, I don't want to date you, Ben, but since 95.
I started working here in 1995, yeah. There's like a small break in between, but yeah.
Since Retrotec has started making digital manometers, Ben was there since the beginning of that, and we've really just been cranking away at new technology and pressure measurement since then. So this DM32X is the latest creation from Ben's team, and then also with us today is Mark Lockwood, and Mark is one of our software engineers, and Mark has kind of led the way on a lot of the interface development and some of the improvements to pressure readings with the digital sensors that we're using as well, allowing us to provide a live graph on the gauge display and provide some really nice readings that way. So Mark is here going to kind of talk about some of the work that he's done. And Lee Canigali is also on the call here with us. Lee heads up our tech support team. And we'll also be checking in on the chat box. So if you guys have any questions as we're going through things, feel free to use that. We'll be checking in on that and answering questions from time to time. And the way we have this structured today is we're going to go through a few slides just to kind of show you what this gauge is all about, what it's made of, what it can do. And then we're actually going to do some demonstrations. We have some software that we use to mirror the DM32X screen over to a PC, and we're going to share that. So we'll cover that as well. So we'll take questions as we transition from the slides over to the demo. And if nothing else, Ben, I will go ahead and kick it over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. I see that the gauge history that you have there, and I look at that DM1, I can still envision myself my little tiny bedroom coding that thing at nighttime and 8 bits at a time, whatever, but long time ago. But I'm gonna show you a quick 30-second kind of promotional video on the gauge, and then kind of talk about some of the features and stuff. And I'll go ahead and do that now here. So here's just a quick 30-minute promo. One of the things that led to the development of the DM32X was, the DM32 had been developed about, 10 plus years ago. So, through COVID and everything, it became quite a bit of a challenge trying to get parts. A lot of the parts, kind of went end of life, difficult to get display driver chips and everything. So that's really what kind of kicked off the initial development of the DM32X. And, that was about a little over 2 years ago now when, Mark, myself, and several others on the team that started working on the hardware platform and the GUI and everything for it. And one of our initial concepts was we just want to make sure that if somebody coming from a DM32 moving onto a DM32X, that the interface was enhanced, but similar to the DM32, so it wasn't a huge learning curve for people. And so we still have on the top of the gauge here just the the intuitive color-coded pressure ports for connecting the gauge to your fan, connecting your channel A tubing through the cloth door to the outside, things like that. Same common Ethernet control, as well as the each of the ports are labeled on the top side as well. And then now on the bottom of the DM32X, we have speakers. We have our resource app on the gauge now, where we have a lot of the training material and a lot of killer videos that Sam's done, give an overview on actually how to use the gauge and interface it with the different devices that we have and things like that. So we have speakers now. On the bottom is also a USB, kind of modern USB-C style connector for charging the gauge and connecting it to your computer. We have also some other on-the-go devices that we'll mention later that you can interface this device with. There's also the just the battery charging indicator here on the next to the connector as well. The DM32X runs on the Android 12 platform, so it gives kind of like a real intuitive, familiar interface user experience for a lot of people out there, where it's like similar Android GUI, where you're like opening and closing apps and connecting to Wi-Fi, things like that. That makes it a lot easier for the user compared to maybe like a custom interface. That the Android 12 platform allows us to develop a multitude of applications that are on there now. Like we have our cloud on there now. We have the actual testing interface on there, and like I mentioned, the resource app. But in the future now, we can easily deploy a lot of different apps and allow third parties to develop other apps that could be hosted on the gauge as well. We have our store where you can go and get the updates and everything for the applications and stuff. And it's just a really nice platform to be able to build from. I don't know if Mark, if you have any comments about being on the Android 12 platform and some of the versatility that it allows us.
Besides the familiarity and the versatility, just that the web connection, being able to control Wi-Fi and stuff, will provide a more seamless updating process in the future for both the apps and the system.
Yeah, exactly. No, I appreciate it. It definitely provides us a lot of versatility, and kind of like I mentioned here, it's just a future-proof development strategy for us here. And as I mentioned, you can, now any of the updates that we come out with for the apps and everything, if the gauge is connected to the internet via Wi-Fi or Ethernet, then it's very easy to open up that RStore application and get updates to the latest versions of the applications on the device or new applications as well. You don't have to go and connect the device to a computer and then install separate software and kind of go through a rigorous process of trying to keep your gauge up to date. The processor on the gauge and the memory and everything allows for, this is a very powerful platform. A lot of these, like the Cortex chipset and stuff, is used for like machine learning and things like that, and just a really high performance processor that allows us to accomplish a lot of stuff on this device. And then we also still use the same 24-bit digital pressure sensors that were used in the DM32, providing some very superior accuracy and stability and everything. But let Mark speak to some of the advancements that we made in some of the filtering technology that we use on here now, which provides a lot more stability in the readings and should allow us to, when you're trying to seek a target pressure, things like that, that you'll see some improvement there as well.
Yeah, it's all digital filtering, and it was a very deep analysis. The goal was to have minimum lag from any of the readings and to have 1 second sensor readings be extremely reliable. With the DM32, you might be familiar with using longer time averaging, but with the DM32X, I encourage you to try and get instantaneous measurements with the 1 second averaging. And the layers of those digital filters that are present here will just take care of removing the noise for you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Mark.
And that's something we can dig into on the second half too, once we do a screen share. Yeah, Mark, we can run through and actually show on the graph what that 1 second readings look like versus, maybe longer 10 or 30 second. So that's something we can show here in a little bit.
I'm excited for the demo, so I'm going to try to get through these slides and
I'll take your time.
Get on, get on with it. But as I mentioned, that on the bottom of the device is the kind of standard USB-C connector with on-the-go technology. So what that allows is the device to interface with a multitude of different adapters and other devices that are on the market. As you can see here, I'm demonstrating that I have a FLIR 1 camera connected on the right side to the gauge, and I just have my portable AC running at my house there. And then on the left here, you see that I've just connected kind of a generic visual inspection camera that you'd also display on the device as well. So this hardware is a great launching point for us to be able to integrate and partner with a lot of these manufacturers as well. And one other note too is that versus the DM32, then you will use a USB-C to Ethernet adapter, and then that's how you would be able to connect this device to a wired Ethernet wired TCP/IP network, really.
So that's kind of a nice benefit too, is if you're doing like large building or multi-fan tests and you're using a wired connection, using that USB-C to Ethernet adapter, you can use a PoE device or power over Ethernet. So that's only really one cable you have to run. You can just run your power to the gauge over the Ethernet cable instead of having to have a power cable and a data cable. So a little bit less to hook up there.
Yeah, exactly. Over one cable now, you have both communication and power. And we are looking at different power over Ethernet adapters, and then within the next few months or so, we hope to come up with a list of like recommended power over Ethernet adapters that are fully compatible with this Android platform and the device as well, the DM32X. Another nice feature of the DM32X is just the brilliant full color display of the 1080p multi-touch capacitive display. It has like a really wide viewing angle now, so you'd be able to easily read the pressure measurements from any angle, different lighting conditions. And the glass is integrated into a full aluminum housing, which ensures that that if the gauge did get dropped or whatnot, then the glass is protected. The glass is using the latest Gorilla Glass technology, and the diagonal of the display is about 5.5 inches. So it's very nice to interface with and use. And as I mentioned, then the durability of I have this drop test video, which I'll maybe show 30, 45 seconds of, but the Gorilla Glass really maintains the integrity. And here's just some of the drop test video. I'll probably maybe just show like the first 20 seconds, then I'll skip to the end because it's a little bit fun to see what we did at the end. But we're trying to test this gauge to what we did to military standard 18G, which just defines like a multitude of drops from different heights on different surfaces. And I'll go ahead and play the video now. Hopefully, maybe you'll hear some of the audio here, but just let me know.
She's a good girl. As far as watching the gauge drop over and over, I'm sure it's just as painful for everybody else to see as it was for me the first time.
Just as engaging.
She's a good girl.
So, after these initial 26 drops that we did on the hardwood floor, we did on full concrete, we did on gravel and everything, then the display held up. There was like a few scratches here and there on the enclosure and the display, but the display was still working. And rather than go through all of the drop tests, then I'll just skip ahead a little bit here to some of the different, here's on the concrete surface.
One question that came in, Ben, was how far were some of the drops from where it was dropped to where it hit the ground?
Yeah, so between probably like 3 to 5 feet on the different surfaces. This is just like see Tim here dropping it onto the asphalt driveway here, and then that was just probably just from typical eye lines. And just that the aluminum frame around the display really protects this device, really. It's very rugged. And it took, I'm going to go ahead and skip here to the, kind of towards the end here. So we were kind of disappointed that we hadn't been able to break the display yet. So I asked Tim just to go ahead and let's just toss it off the second story of the office here or whatever. And then, yes, indeed, it did break at this point, but this was the only time. Let's see here.
Yeah, so if you get one of these, don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see that's about the approximate height that we were doing the drop test from. And during the standard testing, then it was more defined, like dropping from a chute and everything. So the distances were all the same and everything. So you know, we really wanted to build a rugged device, and I think we were able to accomplish that here. The plastic housing is also made from a really high impact macro blend plastic that you know, they use on car bumpers and things like that or whatever, just to take a lot of abuse. So you know, we hope this device holds up well for you guys.
Yeah, and the goal too is to just be able to use the device itself. You know, we put a lot of R&D and effort into, you know, not only how our devices function, but also how they look. You know, when you get into these types of tools, you know, they're not cheap, and we realize that. So we want them to look professional too. So we're hoping that's, you know, there's going to be no cover or anything like that needed for this gauge. You can just use it just like it is out of the box.
Yeah, exactly. And then here are just some you know, basic specs about the gauge and the dimensions of it. It's like you know, a little bit thinner than the DM32. The display fully covers the entire front side of it, like I mentioned, with the 5.5-inch display. And it also still includes you know, magnets for magnetically retaining it on any kind of metal surface. It also has the belt clip. Just still bringing across some of the you know, the good things that were about the DM32. The magnets are retained inside of a plastic housing now, and they're screwed in from the backside and stuff. So, you know, they should retain and never kind of come out of the unit or anything like that. So, you know, we did take some lessons learned from the design of the DM32, which, like I mentioned, was, you know, over 10 years ago now. And hopefully we learned some of them over the years and integrate a lot of that stuff into this new device. With the USB-C charging, you do have a potential charge rate of 3 amps, depending on the current situation of the battery and which power adapter you're using. The ones that we provide with the unit should provide a 3 amp fast charging, which is it's a 5,600 milliamp hour battery. So, you know, you should be able to get this device fully charged in probably just a little over 2 hours. Really, like these specs are stated for best case scenarios, but you should be able to get a fast charge on it. And then with the device in continual operation, you know, as you include Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, we haven't even mentioned it, I guess, then, you know, you will decrease the battery life a little bit and stuff. But, you know, having the USB-C fast charging option is very nice to have. Yeah, and here's some of the connectivity options. You know, all the latest Wi-Fi standards, as I keep mentioning, the USB-C 3.0 on the go. You know, you have the option of each device actually comes with a USB-C to Ethernet adapter, and you should be able to see, you know, typical wired Ethernet speeds across that. And then it also includes the latest Bluetooth technology as well. The development team has really worked really hard since the beginning of this year and before the release of the new device in March to ensure that the DM32X works even better than the DM32 did in the Fantastic software and stuff. So if you go and download the latest versions of Fantastic, I think Fantastic Integrity is coming out within the next week or so, but it should be fully compatible with DM32Xs, and you can do even like a hybrid mix of DM32s, DM32Xs. It should discover and interface with them really quite nicely. And we've done a ton of testing, and we've done a lot of improvements in the robustness of the connectivity options and everything in there. So I think you should have a much pleasanter experience using Fantastic with this device. The DM32X running on the Android platform is multilingual. It currently is in English only, but we are working on the other languages, getting them translated now that we have the resource strings and the GUI kind of defined and everything. That I think French would be first, and followed by a lot of the other languages and stuff. And look forward to that.
We'll also be localizing the numbers too. So number spacing and decimal points, those will be localized to the culture that anybody picks with their language.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, pricing is, if you want to know the latest pricing of the gauge, I believe you can, it's available on the website, or if you speak to the sales team, you may or may not qualify for a discount based on different things and stuff. So I'd recommend, if you're interested in the device and you want to get a quote, then feel free to reach out to the sales team. And this was for the reseller meeting in Europe, and the device was available in March 19th for them, but March 1st for North America. Yeah, awesome. Then I don't know, Lead, is there any questions that or Sam worth talking to about this point?
It might be worth mentioning briefly the changes to the USB port. There's some questions about the strength of that port compared to the DM32. And then a question about how this stacks up to the DG1000.
Sure. Yeah, there's, like I mentioned, it's a USB-C connector, so you can actually insert the cable in both directions now. A lot of times people would break those micro B connectors just because it's a one-way jack, and they would try to force the connection even though maybe they had the cable reversed. And then, as I mentioned too, over the last 10 years of seeing those come in with the broken USB connectors, and once those things have popped off, they oftentimes tear the traces off the board too, and so you're kind of making it unrepairable. That as we were designing the enclosure and everything, then we brought in like all the plastic housing around to sandwich and wrap around that USB-C connector, just trying to make that, and it's glued to the PCB now. It has a lot of, it's like a solder welding mask on the connector as well. So we feel like that, it's with any phone, with any of these portable devices, it's always possible to damage that connector and everything. It's like the one thing on a device that sees the most abuse, but I feel like we tried everything we can to make sure that that thing is as robust as possible. And then just around the DG1000, I think that this is just like a really rugged device, like I mentioned. Like the plastic, the integrity of the plastic, like is and the aluminum housing is just going to provide a much more durable device. Some of the pressure sensor technology that's out there and everything, we all kind of use the same. I think with the filtering that we've done, I think that we've, limited a lot of the potential noise that we see in those pressure readings and things. So, I think that, obviously I think ours is much better. And just the display alone is the clarity of it. Once you see it in person, I think it kind of speaks for itself.
We'll be demonstrating some features that are pretty unique to the DM32X here soon too, that the DG1000 cannot do.
Yeah, a few of those we mentioned earlier in the presentation as well, like the USB OTG support, so you can plug in extra devices, and then just the ability to expand this moving forward with apps and software. It's because it's the Android platform, it's going to be pretty flexible in that sense, which is very cool.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that I think the majority of that question can be answered with the demo that we're about to do here and what this gauge can do and what it has on it. But Mark, if you could briefly explain what the difference is between analog sensors like we used to use and like the Energy Conservatory still uses, and then the benefits of using the digital sensors that we use now, just maybe a comparison of the two.
Sure. With an analog filter, you're going to have a series of resistors and capacitors, and you're playing with the voltage waveform, but it's a little bit out of your control within that circuit. Whereas when we're digitizing these sensor samples, the level of filtering that we have is fully controlled digitally. So when we need to reset filters on the different layers of these things here, we don't deal with random spurious spikes or anything. In fact, everything is designed here to just keep it super clean in between all those auto zero events that you hear when the solenoids click in these things.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. And yeah, and we'll demonstrate that with the graphic display that we're able to do now as well. And I'll go ahead and get the camera and everything set up for that on my end. And if you guys can see my camera here, I just have some manometers laid across here just to kind of show the timeline of kind of where we've been and where we are now. Before Ben came into the fold in the mid 90s with the DM1, that was his first project that he worked on. We were using magnehelic gauges, since we started back in 1980. And then we kind of progressed along the way from the DM1 being the first one, and then the DM2, being the first one with the calculators built in to make testing easier and faster. And then 2013, I believe, is when the DM32 came out for the first time. So it turned 10 years old here recently. So it's been out for a little while. So that gave us about a decade to learn some new lessons on what we can apply to this new DM32X. But I'll go ahead and change things over here. And I'll get my DM32X actually hooked up to a blower door on my test lab here so that you guys can see. Let me see if I can go ahead and spotlight this for everybody. There we go. But yeah, still has the belt clip on the back, just like the DM32. So you can just attach it straight to your top crossbar, just like you currently do. So I'm going to come over here and then share my screen so that you guys can actually see a mirror image of what the gauge looks like. There we go.
Yeah, awesome.
Can you guys?
Cool. Yeah, turned out. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to back up a little bit here. And this is the home screen that you would get to right when you turn the device on. So right when you power it up, you have 3 different apps that you can choose from. The first one's the gauge app. We'll go into that first. And so this is what the display looks like. So it's similar to the DM32. If you can operate a DM32, then you can navigate this pretty easily. One of the biggest things that we changed on this interface is we wanted to prevent users from having to go through a settings menu to change things or to change outputs or readings. So basically anything that's on this screen that you want to change or manipulate, you just tap on it. So for example, like my time averaging, if I wanted to change that for whatever reason, it takes me there immediately if I tap on that on the home screen. Same thing for channel A and channel B. If I wanted to change my channel A output, I just tap on it, choose a different pressure measurement, and then go back. Same thing for channel B. All of my flow outputs are here. Or if I wanted to read pressure on channel B, I can. But if you notice, there's little hearts over to the right-hand side of each one. So if there's one that I use pretty common, like CFM per 100 square feet, if I'm doing residential duct testing, I can heart that, and then it'll put it in the favorites at the top, so I don't have to go scroll down and look for it every single time. It's always going to be right there, easily accessible. And then I can just go back to my home screen there. Oh, let's see. There we go. Changing the device and the range is very similar. On the original DM32, to change the model, I can either click on the fan or I can just click on the model, and that'll take me to a list of all of the products that we have. All of our older duct tester fans, blower door fans are in here. Same thing for adding them to a favorites list. So if there's a couple of fans that I use and that's it, I can make sure that they're at the top every single time so I don't have to go hunt them down. So you can see all of these older models and newer model fans in here. The flow box, we still have the whole flow function in here so that you can make your own exhaust fan flow meter if you want to. And then, of course, we have the Energy Conservatory's products in here, just like the DM32 as well.
And then like something that may not be coming across here is that, all these images are photorealistic. So like the clarity of all the ranges and everything is a lot better than what was illustrated on the previous devices and everything. And then you see that settings icon next to each of those devices as well, which allows you to type in the serial number for the specific fan that you have. And it will actually go and pull down the flow, the data fits for the calibration for those fans by the serial number from our cloud database and everything, pull those values down. So very accurate flow.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ben. And then something else that you'll see on this screen here too, you have options to set pressure. So if I wanted to run a blower door test, I can enter it in the keypad just like on the DM32, but we also put a few hotkeys in here too. So these are the three most common target pressures that we see in air tightness testing. So 25 for residential duct testing, 50 for residential blower door, 75 for commercial blower door. You can just quickly tap those and then go ahead and seek that pressure. So there you can see your speed indication. You can see this icon spinning. So if that's spinning, that means the fan should be running. If that is spinning and the fan isn't running, then maybe you forgot to plug the fan in, or maybe you have an Ethernet cable that's not plugged in, or something like that. So at least the gauge can show you what should be happening. And so now we'll hop over to the graph. You can see here, there's these three buttons here on the top left. Before that, though, I'll talk about the hold button really quick. On the DM32, the hold feature was kind of hidden. You had to tap on channel A to hold your reading. Now we have a button for it that's visible. So it's not really a hidden feature anymore. And then under that is the graph. So if I click on that, it takes me here. So this is what Mark was talking about before. This is what we're able to generate now with these really smooth readings that we can get from these digital sensors with all the layers of filtering that are in there. So right now we're reading channel A. There's nothing happening, but if I come over here, I can kind of manipulate, some wind activity, and we can actually see that in real time, and that's with 1 second averaging. So we don't have a bunch of weird readings spiking around everywhere. That actually shows what's going on there with the 1 second time averaging. And then I can also read channel B if I want to. So there's nothing happening really right now, but I can turn a fan on and we can see what that looks like.
And you do have the ability to adjust those jog increment values too. So they were like plus or minus 10% right there, but you can go into settings and customize those to meet your needs.
Yeah, so you want to fine tune that to 1%, you can.
Yeah.
So if I change the time averaging, we're on 1 second. If I go to 5 second, it kind of smooths it out because we're taking more of an average over that 5 seconds of time. But it does that historically from when we began. So if I go back here, now that it drops off when we didn't have a fan running. If I go from 5 to 1, we can really see exactly what happened by changing that. So it can see what happened before we started doing that. And if I can change my interval here too, I can look at whatever I want. There's a keypad to enter whatever time interval that I want to in seconds, but I can hit 120 seconds. We can go back and see way before I turned it on. Whoop. sometimes this mirroring software does some tricky stuff with us. Back to the graph here. There we go. Go back to channel B. So
yeah, then you have that clear button too, which would just kind of reset the graph and start your readings over if you were trying to
sure.
a specific event or something.
Yeah, so we can start over. And so yeah, and we can save our readings too. We can, one of the last things we did as I'll go ahead and turn this fan off so it's not making too much noise. One of the last updates we made to the DM32 was to allow for remote logging. So this gauge will do that as well. So if you wanted to log any pressure readings or flow readings remotely over the internet, you can, or you can save these pressure readings yourself locally on the device. So I can actually go back in time here and kind of look and see what happened. So all different kinds of ways you can look at this data here.
One big change from the DM32 is if you change to 30-second averaging, you'd have to wait 30 seconds for those samples to collect. Whereas since we store historical data during runtime, if you change this averaging on this graph, it can help you dial in to find the proper averaging to account for any of your environmental effects like noise or other stuff you're finding within the building.
Yeah. That's perfect. And you have your minimum value, your maximum value, and the mean too. That's displayed right here at the top for you.
Yeah,
like if you change to 10-second averaging, you could cut out that window that's showing the big drop that way. I mean, not one averaging, but the duration. Yeah, and change the interval to say 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And then
there we go. That's a flat line.
It'll show the minimum and maximum within the range.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just a save icon in the lower right-hand corner is just to, once you activate that, then it would be logging the data real time to a CSV file local on the device. And then you could go back and later take the device and plug it into your PC, and then just, it would show up in there under File Explorer, and you can just copy that CSV file over and bring it into Excel or anything like that if you want to do some analysis.
You should be able to copy it from a Mac too, not just Windows.
Awesome. Yeah, so aside from just being a manometer as well, it's a very powerful data logger tool as well. And you'll see a similar screen. If we're going to run a blower door test, we have to take a baseline reading before we do that. So that's what we do if we're going to try to weed out any wind activity that's happening outside. So if you hear the term bias pressure, and baseline reading, they're interchangeable terms. They mean the same thing. So we have a button here under the graph that says bias. And that's where we'll go whenever we want to take that baseline reading. And there's a little record button here that we can press, and it'll go ahead and start graphing that out for us. And we can actually see that visually displayed there. So if I simulate some wind happening, that's what our baseline readings will look like. We can see that duration counting down. So we've been going for about 15 seconds now. And we can see what that average is that we're reading on channel A. And then if I wanted to clear it back out, I can hit clear. Or if I wanted to stop that and save it, I can hit yes. Okay. And then go back. I can see my baseline collected here underneath my channel A display. So right here, we had an average of a 0.5 baseline.
Unlike the DM32, you can enable it and disable it if you need to and still preserve that bias capture as well. Anytime you go to that bias page, you can have that show that capture that you had until you clear it.
Oh, very cool. So I can just disable it, but not lose it. Let's see here. If you guys can see at the very top of the screen, you have the serial number. You also have the calibration date of when it was last calibrated, as well as the firmware version. So you don't have to hunt any of that stuff down. You can quickly turn on the gauge to see if you have the latest version of the software that's available for it. If you're working with a building official that wants to see your calibration information, you can do that. I don't think I have this one connected to the internet, but on yours, if you were to click on that, the actual calibration certificate will come up. And of course, the serial number, if you ever needed to hunt that down. One thing that we see when we're doing multi-fan tests in Fantastic for large buildings is trying to see which serial number gauge is with which fan. So instead of really having to try to hunt through and see what that serial number is, you can just quickly reference it right there on the home screen of the gauge. So it's not a number that you have to kind of dig through and find where it is anymore. So as far as just the basic functionality on the gauge, as far as using it as a manometer, Ben, Mark, is there anything else here? Maybe something that I missed or need to cover?
I just encourage everybody who adopts this to use that graph feature. It's a feature I always wanted when I was out in the field doing air barrier testing, and you can let that graph tell quite a bit of a story compared to just reading gauge values, and the dynamic averaging that you can play with could really help in diagnostics and analysis.
Yeah, it just really helps you visualize kind of what's happening, really.
Yeah, it's a new way to kind of see what's going on in buildings for sure. It's something we really haven't had before directly on a device. I guess the only other thing that I can think of here, if you're wanting to change your flow display from CFM to air changes per hour, it's similar to the DM32, where if I want to choose air changes per hour, I can, and then it displays my volume, because you have to have the volume of the building that you're testing in order for the gauge to calculate ACH. But then I can just tap on that and it'll take me to where I can change that volume if I need to. So all of that's quickly accessible from the home screen.
One other thing that can be done on the graph page is when you change units on any of the channels, it doesn't discard any of the data. So if we go to channel B, if you hit that middle thing to change from channel A to channel B on the graph and change the units.
Oh, sorry.
You should be able to tap the ACH value there on there to change the unit. So you could change the pascals there. And that data is preserved. Nothing's discarded. Even when you clear, you can still change between the channels and get that data back. So if you're running and you change the units, you don't lose anything. You can see what the value is in liters and a metric unit or imperial units, whatever makes sense for you there.
Cool. Yeah, I've actually never done that. Yeah, thanks, Mark.
And Sam, you mentioned very briefly about the serial number and the gauge app version there at the top, and how you can click on the calibration date to get your certificate. For people who are familiar with the DM32 and updating firmware on that gauge, you'd have to plug it into your computer and use the DM32 configurator software. That is no longer with the DM32. It's all upgradable from within the device when you connect up to Wi-Fi. And then also that Wi-Fi connection process, you don't have to use a dedicated tool to do that. It's just the Android menu. So, two things that people run into all the time with the DM32 that are kind of painful, this gauge takes care of.
Yeah, if I swipe up from the bottom of the screen, we have what's called the R store. And if I launch that, it'll tell me if I have any updates for any of the apps on the gauge. And as long as I'm connected to the internet, which you can connect this device to the internet over Wi-Fi, just like you can a smartphone or a tablet. And here I can see it looks like I don't have the latest DM32X software on here. So it looks like I have an update I can download today. But that's true for all of the apps that are on here too. For our cloud here, we can go into that too, and the resources app. And that's just swiping up from the bottom. Swiping down from the top, that's where you can actually connect to other devices or to the internet itself over Wi-Fi. So that's where all of those features are, just swiping down from the top of the screen. Our cloud, if you guys have ever used that, I know Joe Medosh is on this. Joe used to work for Retrotec for us and came up with this idea for an automated testing app with the DM32. And that's where we run blower door or duct tests using a smartphone tethered via Wi-Fi to the DM32. But we found that some users got a little frustrated with the connectivity sometimes, or sometimes that wasn't really the best option, or maybe they needed to use their phone for something else while running a test. So with this new gauge, we were actually able to build our cloud straight into the device. So smartphones are I had a friend of mine tell me that they're kind of like Swiss Army knives. They do a lot of things, but they don't do a lot of things well. So, running a test off of a smartphone isn't ideal all the time. So now you can just run it straight off the gauge and generate a report, do a multi-point test without having to tether it to another device. So that's something that no other building science or blower door duct tester manometer can do. And the other one is still going to have to pair to a smartphone or a tablet or a computer of some kind to do that. So if you're familiar with rCloud, it looks just like the app that we've been using for years. It's the exact same app built into here. So if you're familiar with it, then you're already good to go. Just connect it to the internet for the first time, enter your account info, and then off you go. So you can see some of the tests in here that I've done previously. But now instead of having to connect to a device, you can just do it right off the device itself.
I like your network SSID or whatever, like the Cooley lives here.
Oh yeah, Cooley lives here. Cooley's my dog. He's king of the castle.
It was nice because all the work that we did on rCloud previously, we just took the version that we deployed on Android before for the Android mobile devices, and we were able just to deploy that code directly onto the gauge now. So it was a really nice thing to be able to leverage all that work we'd already done.
Yeah. So we still have all the different standards in here you can choose from ResNet, IACC. If you're in California, Title 24, ATMA is in here as well. So, or if you just want to run a basic blower door test, not any specific standard, you can do that as well. So now that rCloud is built in here, we are going to continue to improve and continue to develop rCloud to keep improving it as a product.
And you can use rCloud offline. It should store the test, and then anytime it detects an internet connection, it will try to upload the test to the cloud and everything. But you can also now just use your phone as a mobile hotspot, and then connect your DM32X easily to it, and update that or upload that stuff in real time as well.
Oh yeah, great point. So if I go back to the home screen here, the last app that we have here is the resource app. And this is where we have all of the information stored about all of the products that we make, the manuals, the quick guides, and now we've even included videos that walk you through how to navigate the gauge, how to use it, how to get the readings that you need for certain tests. We have all of our devices across the bottom here. So we start with the gauge itself. So we can click on quick guides, and it'll open up that document to kind of show you how to quickly run through. And the screen is an OLED display, so it's really sharp. Unfortunately, this mirroring software that we're using today doesn't do it justice. But yeah, you can take and zoom in on certain parts too to make the text bigger. So all of that's built in there. The full manual is built in there as well. If I go through across the bottom here, so we've got the gauge, all of our blower door systems, duct testers, flow boxes in here as well. We also have the powered flow hood adapter for the duct tester with some videos on how to use that to turn your duct tester into a powered flow hood, and pressure pans, how to use that and what those readings mean. So all of that's built into here also. If I go to, let's just say we go to blower door, say we're new and we've never really gotten much experience with blower doors in the field, and we're out there trying to get things set up. I can just click on videos, and we tried to break everything down to make it as brief of a video as we can, because we understand when you're in the field, time is money. So you don't want one long video to have to go search for certain parts. So we went ahead and broke everything up and titled it for you. So for example, like how to set up the house, how to put the frame together, how to install the cloths to the frame, how to integrate the fan and gauge together, how to set up the gauge, what the screen should look like to get the readings that you need, taking a baseline reading. So if I click on that, we have this little intro that'll come up for everyone to show you that you're on that right video. And then like, for example, here, you want to cover the fan when you take a baseline, and then just what we did earlier, how to go in and use that bias feature to get the baseline reading that you need. So all of these training videos are in here for each device. Yeah. There's also a little menu up here in the upper left-hand corner that we're going to continue to add some things to. For example, Lee has put together a couple of calculators for us for number of fans. So maybe if you're doing a commercial test where multiple fans are needed, we've had this Excel sheet that you can download from our website that we put together that you can use to see how many fans you need for a certain project. But now we've put all those parameters here into a nice user interface on the gauge. So you can actually use the gauge to see how many fans you need for a project, which is pretty handy. And we've also put together a little stack effect calculator too, which can serve as a nice training tool as well if you're trying to teach some of these concepts to some of your team members. And so this is a place where we're probably going to be putting some other building science and HVAC calculators in the future, maybe some other worksheets as well. So get familiar with this area and think about some of the work that you do. If there's something that could live in this part of the gauge that could help you out in the field as far as tracking things, saving things, let us know because we can build it and put it in here. And Lee was also put together a troubleshooting menu as well. So for example, if I'm having issues with a fan or gauge or software, say if I click on fans and I'm using a model 5000, if I can't reach my target pressure, if my fan pressure is too low, I can click on that. And what it will do is take me specifically to that part of the manual, in the blower door manual, that explains what I would need to do to get the reading that I need to get. That way you don't have to open the manual up and try to search for all that. So we have a nice little search tool in there to narrow things down. So all that's built within the gauge. And to access the information on this app, you do not need to be connected to the internet. This is all stored on there natively. So the videos that I played earlier, it's all stored on the gauge. However, if you are paired to the internet over Wi-Fi, it does open up the library a little more to some more of the training material that we have on our YouTube channel. So it's just a little bonus. If you are connected to the internet, you get a little bit more stuff to reference. But sorry, Ben. What were you gonna say there?
Oh, well, I was just gonna say how cool that was because I didn't even know that existed about the.
Oh yeah,
on the
I've learned some new stuff today too. But yeah, that's a quick rundown on the resources app here. Of course, you can get connected to retrotec.com if you wanted to go and maybe look at some other products or contact us. If you're connected to the internet, you can do that from the gauge. So all of that is built in there as well. And then to go back home, if I wanted to change over, if you're not familiar with any Android devices, you've got these 3 buttons down here at the bottom. This one takes you back. The circle takes you home. Or if I hit the square, I can go back and cycle through other apps that I've been in. So that way you can just kind of quickly navigate and go from place to place as you need to. But I think this is a good place to stop and see if we have any questions. Lee, has any more popped in that we need to go and cover?
Yeah. Can you talk briefly about what kind of battery life people can expect from this device and what the maintenance looks like as far as charging it and battery care and that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. It was, on one of the earlier slides, we talked about, you can kind of expect to see maybe like around 7 hours of battery life on a fully charged battery. And it, takes roughly a little over 2 hours if you have the fast 3 amp charging. It will vary based on, the condition of the battery and the temperature and everything like that. So like the runtime also would be impacted if you're heavily using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth as well. And it's it's a traditional li-poly battery, so it has no memory, so you should be able to abuse the battery and still be okay. And then the overall life of the battery, probably 3 to 5 years before you start to see some degradation in the storage capacity of the battery and everything. And I think that, Mark, do you think I covered all of it? Is that a good representation?
It's worth noting that the 7-hour battery life would be the screen staying on the entire time with the gauge app open, connected to a fan, doing testing. So if you take a lunch break or something and just turn the screen off while you're gone, the battery life could be extended. 7 hours is like a realistic in the field, constant use kind of time.
Yeah, and then the device will go to sleep on its own too. It's a setting that's in the Android settings where you can change it for the display to go to sleep in 5 minutes or 30 minutes or whatnot, which would also conserve some battery.
And if you want to leave the device on, but close the gauge out, again, if you click that square at the bottom, I can just swipe up and close that app out, and then the gauge part will be off.
Yeah, exactly. Like the auto zeroing solenoids and everything like that go into idle state, so it conserves the battery.
And I guess while we're talking about duration too, calibration on this is still 5 years. So that's when we recommend for you to send it back in to get it recalibrated. So we're still on that 5 year time interval for that.
Yep, 5 year gauge calibration interval, and you'll never have to recalibrate the touchscreen.
The touchscreen calibration, no, you never have to calibrate that. We don't here at all. Actually, it just comes. The driver already supports it.
Yeah, I think that was pretty much it for questions.
Okay. Well, if there's anybody on your team or anybody that you wanted to share this with, we are going to have this posted to our YouTube channel. And we appreciate everybody coming in to see this. This is something that we've been excited to share for a long time now. And glad Ben and Mark and Lee all got to be here to kind of share some of the work that they've done to put into this, because we've been working on this for a while.
Yeah, because I also wanted to thank the team of everyone who has worked on this on the development side, sales, support, everybody, whatever, because it has been a huge effort to get this out and get it on the street. So great to see.
Well, Mark, Lee, any last remarks before we sign off here?
Just that the release of this gauge is a huge milestone for us, and I think we're all very excited for it, and excited for how it's going to improve testing, and hope everyone is going to enjoy it as much as we have up to this point.
And my comment is that we'll be having not only bug fixes coming down through the updates, but feature improvements too. The DM32X is a very powerful platform, so this is just the beginning.
Excellent. Well, Ben, Mark, Lee, appreciate you setting aside an hour today to hop on and go through this with everybody. And we're excited to see how this continues to evolve. And for anyone out there, if you have questions, feel free to shoot support@retrotec.com an email, or feel free to send me an email too if you'd like. I'm sam@retrotec.com. And we will catch you on here next time. And thanks again for joining us.
Hey, thanks a lot, Sam. I appreciate it, man.
Sure.
Have a good day, everybody.
See ya.